So from this article, I gained a little bit more knowledge about, if you saw my last video, about this hospital and the charges against them. They really, just listen to this, because Becker's, of course, Becker's doesn't always give the full story. Becker's is like an online, it's a healthcare, they're in the business of protecting the money makers of healthcare, but I usually read their articles just to, because they tend to be short but to the point. But this one went on to say, because this regards a surgeon that was billing for, wasn't supposed to be doing any surgeries, did unnecessary surgeries and did improper sterilizations, and he didn't even have a license anymore. So it says the hospital was indicted earlier in January by federal grand jury alleging the hospital was aware of the troubling practices by this former doctor on OBGYN who was arrested in 2019, but who had privileges at the hospital up until then. The indictment alleges that the hospital was aware that he would induce about 40% of the pregnant women on Medicaid before they were at 39 weeks of gestation for no medical reason, forging documents in the process to claim that they were at or beyond that mark. Oh, so the hospital employees and practitioners allegedly observed or were made aware of such discrepancies, but nonetheless allowed him to continue these practices and continue billing for them. The indictment also alleges that the hospital granted him privileges at the hospital despite his termination at Mayview Hospital in Portsmouth a few years prior, where he was released after conducting unnecessary surgeries. Additionally, the indictment says the hospital was aware of his 2 felony convictions in 1996 and nonetheless granted him privileges. It also says that from 2010 until 2019's arrest, the hospital received $18.5 million in reimbursements from Medicare and Medicaid and various other health insurance companies as a result of procedures conducted by this fraudulent doctor at their facility. In response to the indictment, the hospital said the allegations were unfounded and an excessive overreach, and that they would respond in court. The Chesapeake Regional is dedicated to patient safety. See, these things don't mean anything. Dedicated to patient safety, prioritizing high quality care. See, it doesn't matter anymore. I mean, this is what I've been trying to say. Like, there was a time, but it goes 40, 50 years, 40 years ago, where stuff like that meant something in healthcare. Now that's just words you guys say. Because you executives, I don't know who you are, but you have no moral compass. It's really like that across the board ever since they monopolized all of them. Ever since they decided to go getting in with the World Health Organization and getting on board with the UN, and it's all part of the same diseased problem. Dedicated to patient safety, prioritizing high quality care that meets rigorous national standards. Yeah, what are the national standards? Does anybody really know? I don't think anybody, there's really not anymore. I mean, it's, again, all words. Said the spokesperson for the hospital. Yeah, same thing they always say. Safety protocols are continually monitored to ensure the greatest level of care, protecting the health and welfare of patients. Okay, yeah, you let this guy do this for 10 years. Like, okay. So also I asked AI about this because they want to be, They're trying to say that we're claiming a state entity. That we're so what that means is that when they claim that they have that they're a state entity, it means that you're basically, when you do that, you're less liable. It says here, Virginia state entities like government agencies or public institutions have certain legal protections that help them avoid being sued or held liable in court. Sovereign immunity. This means that the state or its agencies cannot be sued unless they agree to it. It's a way to protect government functions and resources from being tied up in lawsuits. Business judgment rule. The principle protects the decisions made by the leaders of these entities if they make decisions that they believe are in the best interest of the entity, so the organization. And they do so in a reasonable and careful manner. Those decisions generally won't be questioned by courts, even if outcomes are not successful. In summary, these legal defenses help state entities operate without the constant threat of lawsuits, allowing them to focus on their public duties. Like that's what I mean, like the place I was at, just recently, they literally are constantly doing everything that doesn't even meet standards with overriding the nurse and doctor that used to collaborate for admissions. And they're doing that because they don't want the nurse and doctor involved, because we would look at the medical record. Because whenever you're sending a patient to psych, they have to be medically clear first. I mean, it just makes sense because people aren't laying in bed doing nothing like they are on every other medical floor. They're in their clothes, they're up, moving around. In fact, many times, depending on what unit, they may even be locked out of their rooms so that they don't isolate. So they need to be medically clear, okay? There's no way a social worker, just because she's some executive at this 500 or this Fortune 500 place, okay, hospital, standalone, freestanding psych, she has no ability to read the record, the labs and all of that stuff. A doctor and a nurse do, and it's usually the nurse, and then the nurse lets the doctor know. And if the labs are off, like potassium, which is just a little bit with potassium being off, whether high or low, is a big cardiac thing. She's not going to know that, but she just admits them. Doesn't matter. They don't even have to do a lot of the blood tests anymore, depending on where they're at. It's that unsafe. That's why that's a deliberate and constant, a negligent and poor care and dangerous. And she gets away with it. And I don't think these people will continue to get away with it. I don't. But I've been saying that for years. I think eventually your bad practices, your bad behavior, your no moral compass attitude and thinking I can get away with it, I'm just an executive and I always get away with it. I think that's going to come back to haunt all of you executives. I really do. Especially you ones, and I've seen it, especially at the last place, that continually do something that you shouldn't. Like, I've even questioned them, and they give me some bullshit excuse. I'm like, you shouldn't be able to admit anybody without it going through a doctor. Because only a doctor can give orders. Only a doctor. Whatever green light process they have is coming from the high execs, like the CEO, who's a deadbeat. And so they're just doing whatever they say and thinking, well, I can get away with it. Nobody, I'm just doing what I'm told. That's what they said during the Holocaust, too. And nurses hung because of it. I'm not trying to scare anybody but that was the excuse. There was only a few nurses that hung. I don't think there was a lot of women they wanted to have, but there should have been more. One committed suicide, but all of them said the same excuse. I'm just doing what I'm told. You executives, that keep doing what you're told should remember that.